only racist people I have ever met in my life were Christians.
Rashad Ritchie was on the verge of tears as he called out Black Republicans and Black Christians for not being vocal about the fact that many Black women lost their government jobs off the back of the cancellation of DEI.
You guys are cowards. You won't stand up for Black women. You won't stand up for your mama, your daughters.
Also, Black activists fear the presence of Christian ideas in government.
How real is the possibility that the United States could shift from a democracy to a theocracy?
Absolutely real, and it's already happening.
How did we get to the place where the term Christian nationalism is a direct rival to the term democracy?
Whenever somebody says, God bless America, we sort of invoke that, and we don't even realize that we're invoking a term of Christian nationalism. It's not simply that you can say, God bless America, or you're praying for the nation. Now it means that Christianity gets embedded in government. So basically, when we talk about the separation of church and state, now we're talking about Christianity being an explicitly privileged religion over and against every other religion in America, which isn't how this nation was founded.
Lastly, is this the real definition of a coon?
The house 2 blocks south of us just put up 2 MAGA signs in their front yard, and they're Black.
No!
How's that?
No!
We're the only Black family that lives in this godforsaken whiteness, and they're fucking MAGA.
Black Republicans is something I will never understand.
I agree.
We'll discuss all of this and more right now on Cutting Through the Culture. Hello, everybody, and thank y'all for joining us on Cutting Through the Culture. Sorry, we're late tonight. Keisha King Benton is not with us this evening. She's enjoying graduation festivities for her daughter. So congratulations to Keisha King Benton's daughter. And I hope you guys are all enjoying yourselves. I just got back to Dallas from Tennessee, from Nashville, Tennessee. And every time I go to Nashville, specifically Franklin, Bentwood area, I'm always tempted to move there just because of how beautiful that area of the country is. I enjoy visiting Tennessee. I enjoy visiting Virginia. I enjoy visiting Huntsville, Alabama. A lot of these southern states, I just enjoy visiting and just kind of seeing this great country of ours. I got to go up to Franklin and visit with Jason Whitlock. Had a really good time with him, had a really good conversation with him on his podcast, which will likely be airing within the next 2 weeks or so. We got to talk about our upcoming film, which I'm excited about. I also got to meet up with Anomaly, who moved to Nashville from Los Angeles. And so that was also a good time. And then I got to hang out with Carol Swain and Ben Carson and all of them at her conference. And so it was just a really enjoyable time. And it reminded me of why I should be more active in terms of working my networks. I know a lot of people, but I don't really spend a lot of time, tapping them for ideas and collaborations and so on and so forth. But I'm typically the kind of person who likes to kind of keep to myself, work on my work, and do my own thing. But it's not necessarily a bad thing to get out there and meet up with folks. So tonight, as you saw in this intro, we are discussing this idea of Christian nationalism versus democracy, right? Is this a binary that you think you fit into one way or the other? Where did this term Christian nationalism come from? Why is it all the rage? For those of us who are Christians, those of us who do believe that our laws should be predicated on Christian principles, do we automatically lump into this term of Christian nationalism? Is that something that's being foisted on us and we have no idea what it is? or is it something that we should just fully embrace, irrespective of where the term comes from? We'll be discussing all that this evening. And if we can get to it, I don't know if we will have time, but as I scroll through X, as I doom scroll, I keep seeing these pictures of these Black Republican politicians from the 1800s, and I see, specifically Republicans, Black Republicans, white Republicans saying, "See, look, the first ever, congressmen who were black or were Republican," and so they're kind of touting this as a badge of honor. But is there more to the story than meets the eye? Should we, in light of the knowledge that we have, celebrate these first Black Republicans? That's a question that I think should be open to debate. So anyway, without further ado, we're going to bring up our panelists, starting with Mr. Blanche Robinson. How are you today, Blanche?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Doing good. How has your week been?
Week's been pretty good. Just,
Cool.
working and chilling, it's been pretty good.
I saw that you and Keisha went live. Well, did y'all go live or did y'all just do a pre-recorded video when you were talking about South Africa?
I thought it was live. I think she may have did a clip that.
I saw the clip. I didn't see the live.
Yeah, we went live.
Cool.
So
Cool.
it was real good. I mean, I enjoyed it. I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's something that we should definitely keep our eye on, especially too, because of the parallels between what is going on over there and some of the things that can potentially be going on over here, in light of a lot of the rhetoric that has been touted for years now. I think it's interesting because living in and maybe you speak to this, but living in the United States where there's freedom of speech and everything else that goes on, it's I think people, especially in the advent of social media, are familiar with a lot of the rhetoric, a lot of fringe and what we call third rail rhetoric, and then to the kind of tried and true talking points, and there's a lot of buzz, but people never think that that action will be taken to the streets, that those words will then manifest into violence or manifest into some of the things that you see happening in South Africa with them literally killing farmers, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Americans here feel as if they can say anything they want on social media, that they can kind of like porn, start off with something soft and then just completely look for people who will say the most outrageous things because they want to scratch that itch. Do you think that people think that, okay, all of this exists online, but it will never really kind of manifest out into the streets?
I think there are people and the powers that be that would want it to be in the streets. They would love to have a race war because that's the ultimate thing that people are talking about. Will this manifest into this war where it's, white versus black, or whatever, rich versus poor, whatever kind of dynamics, but they want it to be a war on the street. I don't think, me personally, that it will get to that point without something inorganic happening. So they're going to have to create some kind of event. They're going to have to manufacture it to make it real. To me, it won't organically happen because most people don't think like the fringe peoples of each group. So the far right people and the far left people aren't the majority of people in America. The difference with South Africa is mostly one group of people. So it's not like it's any kind of mixture. It's like they're all this, and the whites are the very small minority in the country. So whatever the white people do in South Africa is magnified because it's a small group doing it. But over here, we got a history of people being vocal, people having their own opinion, people being extremists. So I don't think an event will happen organically. But I do think that it could happen if the powers that be, put something together to make people think that this thing is real. Like the conservatives in South Africa sound like conservatives over here. The black folks in South Africa that are conservatives. The one lady today I played on my video, she was talking about how it's not just the Dutch farmers. She was like, it's the English, she said it's all the white people, and it's the people who look like me that disagree with them. So she said the enemy is the ANC. So she said it's not, she said she don't want people to get caught up in it's just the farmers. She said it's not just the farmers, it's anybody that disagrees with the ANC. So
right.
yeah, that was a good point that she made. And so when we talk about this conflict splitting into the streets, I can definitely see it in South Africa because of how the dynamics are. In America, it's a lot more difficult because we have guns here. Like people walking around. I don't know. I just think here it's a lot more difficult because the bloodshed would be quick. Like I don't know. So it's possible, Chad, but they're gonna have to manufacture something. They're gonna have to do something. They're gonna have to get people to rile up. They're gonna have to do something because most Americans, honestly, want to just have a good life. They want to raise it. They want to have a family. They want to, I mean, most folks aren't politically savvy. I mean, I don't know. I don't think most people are concerned with what's going on, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No, those are actually very good points. And that piece that you mentioned about if something were to happen, it wouldn't be organic, but it will lead to raw emotions, and that's what matters. The raw emotions matter more than the authenticity or inauthenticity that precipitated the events that follows. Let's get Chuck in on this conversation. How are you, Chuck?
What's happening, bro? You all right?
Yes, sir. How are you? How was your time with how was your wife's birthday shindig?
Oh, yeah, man. We had a good time, man. We had fun. Yeah, we had fun. Spent a lot of money, but it was worth it, man. We had a good time. But it's my wife, so I gotta do what I gotta do, So
do what you gotta do.
It's cool. Yeah.
Any thoughts on what
y'all do some fine dining, Chuck?
Yeah, man.
Chuck was all out.
Oh yeah, I went all out, man. Rented a car. I went all out, man.
Is it like her 40th or something? Is there a reason?
Nah, it wasn't her 40th. I was joking around with her. I'm like, man, I don't know where your 40th, because should be 40 next year. So I'm like, hey, I was like, I don't know. I was like, maybe we'll do a trip or something. I don't know. But then my daughter is her 16th birthday next year, so she may want to do something big for her sweet 16. So I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see. I got some time to think about it, to plan it out. But yeah, we had a good time though. Last week was cool. It was fun. Yeah.
Any thoughts on what Blanche and I were just talking about?
Yeah, man. I honestly, man, I was kind of tripping out a little bit. I was kind of going into I was kind of daydreaming a little bit, trying to get myself together. I literally just walked in the house moments ago and sat down, and I caught the tail end of the montage. So I didn't see the montage. I heard you explain the topic of the show tonight. But I think I got the gist of what you all were talking about, even though I was kind of trying to fiddle around with my computer and get stuff together. But yeah, man, it's I don't have much to add on to what Blanche has already said. I think you said about like what's going on in South Africa. Could Blanche see something similar happening here? Was that your question you posed to him?
Yeah, just because, I guess just to rephrase it, we've all seen it. Anybody who spent a day on social media sees the rhetoric coming from all sides of the spectrum. Difficult to know, what's coming from bots versus what's coming from real people.
Right.
You see extremes on every side. And, is it the case that that's literally the extent of it? That, these talking points, they live and breathe online, but outside of that, they don't have any kind of legs. Just last week, we were talking about this rhetoric because people think that, yes, it is extreme that I forget his name, Julius, whatever. In Africa, kill the farmer. how that's, you know, that's exclusive to, you know, third world countries. Of course, South Africa isn't a third world country, but it's in Africa. But that exists over there. Whereas in America, we at least have the dignity and we're at least sophisticated enough to where we don't speak that way. When in reality, just last week we showed a clip of Oprah saying, you know, these old white people just need to die.
Yeah.
I mean, you see this kind of language and rhetoric all the time here in the United States. But is there a difference in South Africa versus the United States in terms of, we might talk a big game, but you will never see it kind of manifest into, you know, people actually taking these views into action in the streets? What's your thoughts? I mean, Blanche's view was that, you know, he thinks that it could happen, but not without a kind of inorganic event taking place, maybe by the feds or maybe by the shadow government or someone else. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I don't think. I mean, you know, I would never say never, right? I mean, it doesn't happen until it does, and you look around and you're like, whoa, you know, how did we get here? Yeah, I think like Blanche said, I think more and more things have to happen. You know, we do have a healthy, well, of course it's under constant barrage.
I remember you saying that we're not as civilized as we think we are.
No, we're
and
not.
For some reason, that's always stuck with me. Do you think that coincides in some way with, I guess, what you're saying or what you're about to say? I cut you off. You didn't get to say what you said, but go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we are we aren't as civilized as we think we are. Absolutely. I mean, we have to be on guard. And then the reason why I say that is not simply because I have some special insight into the mind and the heart of man, you know, although you can make the case for what I'm saying from that perspective as well. But all we have to do is look at history. I mean, and time again, you know, you look at the depths to which mankind has stooped in order to inflict pain on their fellow man. You look back, you look at certain situations, and how can human beings treat one another in this way? And a lot of these situations have happened, especially, I mean, if you're talking about Africa. I mean, it seems as though this is perpetual. It seems as though it hasn't ceased since you know, since the mid 20th century. These things haven't ceased. You know, I always refer in my mind, and Blanche and I even talked about it briefly when I did a live with him a few months ago. You know, I think about the Cambodian genocide from 75 to 79, and how in just 4 years, roughly a third of Cambodia's population was wiped out. It's, you know, it's amazing, you know, how human beings, how savage and barbaric they can be. Now, where we are in America right now, I think psychologically and as far as the morale of the country, I think, I'm not saying we're in a good place, but we're not quite there yet. As I said, as I was going to say, I mean, Blanche mentioned the Second Amendment. I don't mean to overly simplify it, but, you know, there are a lot of guns in the general population. You know, God bless the framers and the founders who understood how important that would be. But I think, especially when I saw what was happening in 2020. Now that's a very, very good example. What happened when, you know, the image of George Floyd and Officer Chauvin kneeling on him, and how that just it was like lightning hitting dry brush. And the next thing you know, I mean, you know, it was the summer of rage. It was 1968 all over again, and you know, here we are. I firmly think that if not for the fact that a lot of Americans are armed, I think that 2020, I don't know if we would have survived as a country, because I think that there was something there that was stopping, you know, the hordes from going completely over the edge. But if you know, if the American people weren't armed, I don't think the 2020 might have been the end, because I mean it was literally mass hysteria. It was literally mass hysteria. So it could happen.
Yeah.
Can I say something? To piggyback on what Chuck said. So even with the and this is why I love America. Like even with all that going on, like at a certain, like here in Atlanta, they had a 10 p.m. protest riot loot cutoff. So at 10 p.m. the state troopers come and sweep it's like y'all gotta
they had a riot curfew.
Yeah, y'all can do all y'all want to do, but at 10 p.m. you see them horses lining up, you see them stadium. Guess what? Y'all got to go home. So even though it's chaotic, it's still like y'all ain't finna just take it. Now listen, we're gonna let y'all get y'all little rocks off a little bit. Now in like liberal cities like I want to say Portland and Seattle, where they were taking over little parts of town, even that was still like, okay, y'all can do it for this period of time. Even here in Atlanta, they took over a little section of town where the guy got killed at the Wendy's, but they ended up killing a little girl. So
Get a little girl,
yeah. So my point is that, to Chuck's point, the only thing that saves America is the fact that there is some type of infrastructure surrounding the chaos. It's not the chaos surrounding the infrastructure, it's the infrastructure surrounding the chaos. So it's only so far it can go. Now, if there's no police departments, if you got the military LGBTQ'd out, if you got all this stuff going on, and now when 2020 happens, it's a wrap, because there's nothing to stop these maniacs from just going completely, off the rails. So I think that we still have some semblance of a structured state, and national government that won't allow it to get, too out of control. But I think that's what they're working on now, is gutting out the things that keep this thing together.
Yeah, because it's at the end of the day, it's just it's a bond. Your word, right? Your word is your bond. It's a civilization it's a gentleman's agreement, so to speak. I mean, the promises that we make to each other, or the laws on the books and the principles outlined in the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights and so on and so forth. I mean, they mean nothing if the people who imbibe, we give these principles, we give them, meaning through our conduct, and our conduct displays our fidelity. If we don't believe, then essentially those words they're worth less than the parchment they're printed on. I mean, it means nothing. And so it starts with, we have a virtuous citizenry, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that virtuous citizenry piece, I think, is key. And it leads to, I guess, another element that I want to bring into the conversation. But before I do that, I wanted to play this clip real quickly that we had in the queue, because I think it adds to the conversation. So here's that.
How real is the possibility that the United States could shift from a democracy to a theocracy?
Absolutely real, and it's already happening. People being told they need to put up 10 commandments in the schools, or you need to buy the Trump Bible for $59.95 in Oklahoma, or you need to think about how we think about abortion, and you think about the fall versus Roe versus Wade here a couple of years ago. All of these things are really important and speak to this idea about theocracy, right? I think one of the ones that people don't even think about very much is this idea that was floated by U.S. government that we give $5,000 to people who have a newborn baby. Now, who gets to get that $5,000? Does a black woman get that $5,000, or does a white woman who's married get $5,000? I want to know, because I think this is really interesting. So that's the other piece of this, is that there's ways in which these Christian ideas float into, almost permeate every area of governmental life. So the kinds of civil liberties and things that people have are being taken away by people who believe that you should live the way that they want you to live, and not the way that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights have talked about how you should live in this country. Whenever somebody says, God bless America, we sort of invoke that, and we don't even realize that we're invoking a term of Christian nationalism. It's not simply that you can say, God bless America, or you're praying for the nation. Now it means that Christianity gets embedded in government. So basically, when we talk about the separation of church and state, as Thomas Jefferson would have talked about it when he wrote that letter to Danbury Baptist, now we're talking about Christianity being an explicitly privileged religion over and against every other religion in America, which isn't how this nation was founded. Now Christianity is being wielded as a weapon. in terms of how this nation is being run and how people get talked about as being, not Christian, not particularly involved in Christianity, and that ends up being a measure. So the kinds of things that the administration is doing right now, whether they're privileging Christianity or going after anti-Christian bias, for instance, means that if you're not Christian, this is going to be a problem for you.
So
obviously there's a lot to unpack in what she said. This, by
Wow.
the way, is a University of Pennsylvania professor.
Oh, wow. How did I know? How did I know?
I don't like the way she holds her mouth, by the way. It's just, that's a, yeah.
Got that her
Anyway.
bottom jaw kind of. She got a
Yeah,
chicken bone. She got a chicken bone in her bottom jaw.
I can't look at that for too long. But she, but the whole aspect of, America wasn't founded on Christian principles. Like, first of all, she's lying. And second of all, she's being dishonest when she talks about, separation of church and state, so on and so forth. The issue was, take Patrick Henry, for example. His dad was an Anglican and his mother was a Presbyterian, I think. And he favored Presbyterianism more than Anglicanism. And the issue that he had with the Anglican Church at the time is that in his jurisdiction, the Anglican Church had the authority to tax citizens within the jurisdiction, whether they were part of the Anglican Church or not. And so he wanted to basically undo that and allow people to practice whichever Christian denomination they desired. And what ended up happening is you had clusters of different denominations spread throughout the colonies. And so it wasn't a question of which religion, it was rather a question of which denomination. So that's actually the fact of the matter. But of course, these secularists and these atheists and these Marxists and nihilists, they try to take this language or these conversations that the founding fathers were having and broaden it to include other religions. And in so doing, say America is not founded on Christian principles. And so that leads to my question, kind of to take it back to the conversation that we were just having. I've always wondered, when it comes to these other nations that have constitutions that are kind of fashioned after the American Constitution, why is there such a difference in terms of decorum, in terms of infrastructure and civilization between our nation and theirs? Well, the issue, and if I can identify it, is that while in America, our nation was founded on Christian principles, these other nations were founded primarily on secular principles. And so you might be able to mimic in some fashion the language that's in our Constitution, but you're not doing so with the kind of Christian vigor that our nation was founded upon. And so there's going to be a difference. Of course, those Christian values here in the United States are going to reverberate into the generations, because you have people on the ground level teaching those Christian principles to their children and so on and so forth into the modern age, even though we're losing a lot of it, which is, that's a different story entirely, because while you do see an increase of youngsters who are adopting Marxist ideas, you do see a increase, particularly among young men, back into the church. And so that's something that's worth exploring. But I digress. I'll table that for now. But I do think one of the differences is, yes, we were founded on Christian principles, where these other nations, you might be able to mimic a lot, but when you do so primarily on a secular basis, you're just not going to get the same kind of results as we have here. And then the second thing is, although we have corrupt politicians in the same way that they have corrupt politicians in South Africa, I think one of the biggest differences is this kind of there was such an emphasis placed on a government formed by the people here in the United States, to where even if that's not true in reality, the threat of that is still in existence to some degree, enough to where politicians, they still act corruptly, but they do so with they walk this kind of fine line, whereas in a lot of these other countries, their corruption is it kind of leaves this impression among the people that the insane people are they're controlling the asylum, and they don't have any kind of they move without any kind of
no checks and balances.
Yeah, pretty much. So anyway, y'all can respond to either the clip or what I said, or yeah, have at it.
You gonna go ahead, Blanche?
Go ahead, Chuck.
That lady, man, that was a oh man, that was a lot. Um, yeah, I mean, Chad, you raised a lot of great points, and again, I second every word of it. This woman doesn't understand that that Christianity, you know, the theocracy versus democracy. These people are so stupid. Anyway, we'll get to this whole idea of democracy maybe at a certain point in the conversation, because democracy is a very misunderstood term, and it could be a scary term when you really understand it. But Christianity, I mean, Chad made a good point bringing up Patrick Henry, very important man to the history of the founding of this country. Um, and you know, I think I mentioned Patrick Henry in Chad's documentary, and I think it did. I don't know if it's going to make the final edit, but I mentioned the fact that Patrick Henry was, he refused, he protested the Constitutional Convention. He refused to attend. You know, very man of very strong conviction, and Patrick Henry, you know, he was ahead of his time. You know, he really saw a lot of things that were coming down the pike, and I think too of a man Burke. What is it, William Burke? Why am I forgetting Burke's first name at the moment? But you all know who I'm talking about. Famous conservative philosopher Burke, and I think Burke had a Catholic mother and a Protestant father, and you know, Burke was of the impression that the secular law and essentially must prevail.
Edmund Burke.
Edmund Burke, thank you, Blanche. I'm tripping on him. I had a I had a live with a friend of the show, Sub Zero, earlier today, and we talked about spirituality and religion. As a matter of fact, he wanted to get my opinion on hoodoo and voodoo and the occult, a lot of these things, and how these ideas sort of made their way into the American conscious. So I've been talking a lot today, so I apologize. But Edmund Burke, I don't know, I forgot his name. But yeah, I think Edmund Burke had a Catholic mother and a Protestant father, and Burke was of the opinion that these kind of religious differences could never be kind of reconciled at the point of the state without one having to sacrifice the other. And so as the West sort of developed, religion kind of became this private affair. But to go back to Chad's point, it is the Christian ethos that in fact laid the groundwork for the secular law, for this the practice or the principle of self-governance or accountable governance, respect for law, a culture of confession, the public spirit. Without these ideas, without these concepts, how can you have representative government, and how can you even think of having any semblance of accountable government? These things just don't work. I pulled up, I always keep little notes and stuff like that. And when a time ago, when I read Roger Scruton's book, How to Be a Conservative, this line in the book stood out to me, and I kept a record of it and I wrote it down. And Scruton said something that stuck out to me in that book. He said, "Those who confess sacrifice their pride, and those who forgive sacrifice their resentment." There are two key elements within Christian thought, within Christian thought. That's forgiveness and that's repentance, right? You cannot have an America as we know it without those two concepts. You must sacrifice your pride and your resentment through forgiveness and through repentance. If you try to say, these other religions, and then I wasn't Keisha's podcast I was on, because I was talking about the I think I might have been talking to Keisha. I was talking about some of the internal contradictions of liberalism and how some of those contradictions can be exploited by people with evil intentions, right? But if you were to take some of these other religions, for example, let's take Islam, for example. Let's just take the lowest hanging fruit. You talk about, well, you take Islam and you try to put it on equal footing and make that kind of like the bedrock core sensibility of the America, of the American identity, of America's personality. You don't have this, you don't have the same country, right? You don't have this country. Something changes, something is different. And I know this professor knows that she understands that, whether she's in denial or not. And so I hope that kind of made sense. This is, in fact, this has nothing to do with Christian nationalism or Christian. This has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that. She is, I wish she's one of those people that I wish I could meet in person and have a public debate with, and just mop the floor with her and show her how much her PhD is actually worth. But anyway, I'll let Blanche chime in if he has some. But it's far more complicated than she's making it out to be.
So yeah, I mean, piggyback off of what Chuck is saying. So if America isn't a Christian nation, if America is an Islamic nation, she couldn't even speak.
Exactly.
Like, she would be locked away somewhere with no opinions of her own. So the fact that she's condemning how she got here is insanity. 65% of Americans identify as Christian. 73% of Black Americans identify as Christian. So America, for Black and white, is mostly Christian. And our nation, for the most part, is a Christian nation. Our nation wasn't founded Buddha and Allah. Our nation was founded on biblical principles. So again, this notion that if America becomes more Christian, it's going to be bad. Like, she even said that they want the 10 Commandments in the school, or I guess in the schools. But I remember when we used to go to motels, they used to always have the Bible in every drawer, the Gideon's Bible. America has been this way. Like, this is nothing. People be on the streets passing out Bibles, street evangelism. Like, America is very much a Christian nation. But what I find is that what it's at odds with is the left, because everything they want to do is counter everything that God's word is. So you can't even be on that side and be a true Christian, in my opinion, because they're nuts. So we think about things like abortion, think about the trans, think about all these things. And it's just, so I believe she knows what she's saying, but to me, their intention is they don't want to be restricted. They don't want to walk out. They don't want to walk outside. And the majority of people saying what you're doing, like, they don't want to walk outside and see a billboard with 10 Commandments on it. Like, they don't want to see people walking around with has to say love Jesus. Like, they don't want to see this trend of they're calling it Christian nationalism, but really they don't want to be restricted. And again, Lamont Hill, he's a dirtbag. He was a Nubian, so he should. So as far as religion goes, he shouldn't even be opening Nubian or Christian. It's not even a conversation. Like, come on, man, stop.
Right. Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, man, there's a lot to unpack with that clip right there, Chad. I would have to take notes and parse it and break it down sentence by
be its
sentence.
own show, actually. We just
I wasn't ready for that.
Let's listen to a little bit more of what she had to say.
The second thing I think that's really important about this to think about in terms of Christian nationalism, how people deal with it, there's an element of capitalism in it. So basically what you have are people who believe that Christianity and capitalism are inextricably mixed. They are mixed together. And what it means is that if you're a good Christian, you also should be prosperous. And Donald Trump exemplifies that. No matter what you think about his Christianity, whether you think he's a Christian or not, for many believers, people believe that he's God's man on earth because he's rich, he's a businessman, he became the president, and that is the reason why they back him.
So again,
What?
Wow.
So I mean,
Wow.
so once again, I mean, first of all, the mouth. I can't stand the mouth, but the and this reminds me. I mean, it goes back to a lot of what you've been saying, Blanche, where you have these blacktivists who have Black women particularly at the forefront of it, and they have a vendetta and a crusade that they are leading against quote unquote whiteness, i.e. Christianity, i.e. wholesome moral values, i.e. the free market, which they call capitalism. And so whenever they think of the term whiteness, which is a word that she used, and the word that a white woman used that we'll get to here in a moment in the show, again, all that term whiteness is supposed to encompass all of this stuff, the free market, Christian values, so on and so forth. And so they use their positions and their professions to attack from every front that which has made America a force to be reckoned with. And so they tried to philosophize and intellectualize basically this attack against Western Protestant Christian values. And I think that's encompassing what she was saying. So,
I mean, yeah, I agree. That's exactly what she was saying.
yeah.
Yeah, and again, this attack on capitalism, Christian values, she's conflating all these different things. I guess the kind of Christian she likes would be. I mean, I mean, does she? Is she aware of how many Christian socialists that there have been? In the United States, this goes back to 1600s, 1700s. A lot of the early socialist utopians in the United States during the colonial period and afterwards. A lot of these men were Christians. These men were Christian or theologians and whatnot. I mean, and what did she say? God, Trump is like their
God.
Their God on earth because he's rich and he's white and this and that. I mean, Christianity has nothing to do with the free market. Two totally separate things. This is why capitalism or free market economics runs into this issue. And I think this is an issue that, to his credit, someone like Rousseau foresaw. Even someone like Friedrich Nietzsche foresaw that kind of making man out to be like this material object or this thing that's motivated solely by material things is to strip away, is to dumb man down and to turn him into something that he's not, because man his innermost his thoughts, his passions, and his convictions, these things are far deeper, far more complex than how they may seem on the surface, right? What motivates a man? What motivates his behavior? And what does he really want? And what really brings about fulfillment, contentment? This is why I believe that you saw the rise of a lot of these totalitarian ideas by the early 20th century, because across the West, people within that particular political context were dealing with a world, or dealing with a culture and a civilization that was losing its meaning. Because free market economics means one thing, capitalism and economics means one thing, but those things doesn't even begin to pretend to deal with some of life's most complicated questions. Who made us? Why am I here? What do I really want? Where do I go when I die? And so all of these questions, these are philosophic questions, not so much scientific or economic questions. These are philosophic questions. So for her to try and bring capitalism and Christianity together, and I can see where there may be some overlapping there, right? We think about the inherent dignity of every human soul, right? That's another Christian idea, uniquely Christian idea. And I can understand how the free market system of free market economics kind of borrows from this idea. and property rights and everything else. And we can get into what the Bible says about that versus what the Bible has to say about socialism, in one way or another. But those two things are not the same, right? Christianity deals with things of the spirit, and these are ultimately questions that, from the beginning of man, since he could think, he has contemplated his existence, where he comes from, and why he's here. Capitalism doesn't account for those questions. That's not its providence. That's not where it belongs. So she's wrong when she says that.
And what I find interesting is the people on the left, when it comes to somebody having depraved behavior, they seem to be so understanding as to why they're acting that way. They seem to say things like, "Oh, it's from slavery. Oh, they were conditioned. Oh, they have all the reasons as to why they're depraved." But when it comes to a white Christian, it's because they're Christian. Like, to me, it's just utter, like, it's foolishness. Like, it's just the dumbest thing, and especially when most black people come from the church. This ain't like, most black folks are Christian. Most black folks got Bibles in their house. Most black folks used to have Jesus on the wall. I mean, black folks are heavily into Christianity. Even now that it's even faded away, majority of black folks
Christianity.
Huh?
A forfeit Christianity.
Yeah, well, forfeit Christianity. But my point is that that's the majority of black people.
I'm sorry. I meant to say counterfeited Christianity is what I meant.
Counterfeit. But the majority of blacks are still Christian. So how is she wrestling with the majority of blacks being Christian? What that Christianity is good, where you get to be lukewarm and do what you want to do and do liberation theology in the pulpit. Like, I don't know. I just think it's crazy that these folks have white people down to a science. Like, they just know how they believe in God, how they want to make money, it's just crazy. I mean, it's to have all this insight on white people, white Christians, and then but your own people, you can't even read or write on grade level. It's just crazy.
So she's playing this. I just said she's playing this game where Christianity is diametrically opposed to her Marxian worldview, and nationalism conflicts with her globalist worldview, and she's brought the two together, and she's created this kind of straw man, this caricature of some of these concepts, in order to use that as a springboard to sell her agenda, to sell her own particular a worldview. That's what she's doing.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, who said that Christianity and democracy, or what they call theocracy and democracy, or Christian nationalism and democracy, who said that that's the binary, right? Because what they're doing is they're defining the terms. They're defining what it is that we're
making it up
for. Right. Democracy, to Chuck's point, equals globalism. Democracy equals Marxism. Democracy equals communism. Democracy equals secularism. Whereas Christians, what they want is whiteness. What they want is capitalism. What they want is etc. What they want is to get rid of Roe v. Wade and to get rid of live and let live and all these other things. So they define the terms. Speaking of defining terms, Chuck, what do you believe Christian nationalism is? Like, what is that? I don't think a lot of people know what that is.
Well, according to her, and they try to, conjure up these images or evoke feelings of Hitler, this kind of Unitarianism, again, because like Blanche alluded to, it's wanting to erode tradition by kind of capsizing or turning on its ear certain standards, certain things that we either know to be true by way of divine revelation, or whether we say, for example, you have some more secular, I guess, leaning conservative, say like a Heather McDonald, who suggests that Christianity or believing or having some kind of faith isn't vital to a conservative orientation. She makes the case that, simply put, that human beings over time, we kind of have this epistemic wisdom, this collective wisdom, and over time we keep what works and we discard the things that don't work. And so we, this is, I guess, at least a respectable aspect of conservatism, like this idea that we kind of gain wisdom over time, as opposed to something being revealed to us in some kind of supernatural capacity, right? But that, again, that's someone like Heather McDonald's worldview. But regardless of whatever it is, again, she is a proponent of a different kind of behavior, a new sort of standard. And when you have people, and she wants to make the case that Donald Trump is the epitome of this perspective, this worldview, this belief, because you have people that are simply trying to bring America back to some sense of sanity, rationality, to say, well, we shouldn't do these things because these things it ends badly, right? We're on the wrong track. And if we continue down this path, we're headed for destruction. Again, you can believe that this is collective wisdom over time, or you can believe it's divine revelation. That's a separate conversation, or a separate part of the conversation, right? But she has a totally different worldview that she is in favor of, abortion and LGBTQ rights. And I'm sure she's right in line, right? She's right in line with the rest of her kind, right? That's how. And so she takes that, and then again, as I mentioned previously, a comment ago, this idea of nationalism, right? She probably wouldn't have an issue with the kind of nationalism, say, that Franklin Delano Roosevelt talked about, or the kind of nationalism that his cousin FDR would later come to champion, which is pretty much, it goes all the way back to, right, the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. How big or how strong should the federal government be, right? And how should we best go about the business of governing this republic of states? How much power should the federal government have versus how much government should the states? How much power should the states have? The government, and so that's what the conversation was traditionally when you're talking about nationalism versus, the principle of states' rights, right? And this is what goes back to, I think I mentioned this in the documentary, or maybe the documentary on the administrative state that Chad and I did, the short doc we did about Theodore Roosevelt and his new nationalism speech, right? New nationalism. He wanted this new kind of government, this new top-down government, this kind of progressive style government. Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson were trying to fashion the United States government after the Bismarckian framework that took place in Germany under Otto von Bismarck. And so they were taking these ideas and trying to implement them in the United States in the early 20th century. So this is what they're talking about. And so over time, we, the citizenry, began to realize that our representatives, right? I mean, this was all kinds of overreach. And we saw that the United States, from a policy point of view, was getting pushed in a direction that the public, right, did not consent to. And so, Thomas Jefferson, he talks about how, government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed. Well, we didn't give our consent, right? You got our leaders going overseas and they're engaging in all these talks with all these foreigners and coming up with plans and agendas. And we're like, well, we didn't vote on this. How can you sidestep the voter? How can you sidestep the citizen?
Let me put this question to the two of you. So like when you look at where we are at this juncture in Western civilization, namely with the kind of ultra secularization vis-a-vis postmodernism, and how specifically the advocates of this charge invoke the Declaration of Independence and the First Amendment and Thomas Jefferson, is where we are inevitable due to the ambiguity of these documents, of these founding documents? In other words, is this a failed experiment? should we have been more explicit in these founding documents in terms of defining that it is biblical Christianity that undergirds our values, undergirds our country? Have we, by way of being ambiguous, kind of opened the floodgates for demagogues, charlatans, atheists, secularists, Marxists to come and, in a sense, turn the tide, as it were? I'm hoping that question makes sense.
It does.
Yeah,
Go
I mean,
ahead,
I think
Lance.
that it needs. I think they did it right because the onus is on the people to follow God. What they did was lay the foundation, but it's our job to, follow God's word, especially when at the time period they wrote it, most people were what we consider Christians. So to me, it was up to them to do it because think about it, either way, whether they make it more explicit to say follow these biblical principles specifically, you're still going to contend with liberties and freedoms. So you're still going to be met with the same problem because I can choose whether I want to do it or not. To me, it wouldn't change the outcome of the human behavior because it's the person's faith in God. And so I think they did it in a way that it put it on the people for people to choose. You can choose to do it extremely Christian, or you can choose to do it the secular way. But I think they just gave us a choice. But to me, it's still up to the people. Even like now, where they added the 10 Commandments to the schools in, I think, Louisiana. That was from the people doing that. That wasn't anything that was mandated by anybody. They just chose to say, we're going to vote to see if we want it in the schools, and there it is. So I don't know. I think making it more explicit, you still run into the same problem, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know where Chad went, but I'll just say, when Chad said, "Is this a failed experiment?" and I said, "Well, I don't know if it is a failed experience in the past tense, meaning the experiment is over. Are we soon to fail? I don't know if we're soon to fail, but eventually we're going to fail because we have no choice. We always fail. Why? Because we're human beings.
Right.
And that's the important part. And this is why God is so, you cannot dispense or dispatch with it. Because what God does, again, God gives you this sense of hope in the midst of suffering, that no matter what's going on around you, if you are of a certain makeup on the inside, well, then you are essentially that thing. You're not connected. You're not one with your outer circumstances. You could be a slave. You could be, this is why I think of this as an example when I see all this stuff about Larry Hoover in the news, and everybody kept talking about, well, Larry Hoover deserves to be freed and this and that, and not just Larry Hoover, but any prisoner for that matter, as an example, and say, well, they've repented, they've learned their lesson, set them free. It's like, okay, well, you can be free and still be in prison, because being in prison doesn't mean you're not free. If he is in fact rehabilitated, if he has been redeemed, then that doesn't mean automatically that he belongs amongst those in the general population. He still may deserve to be in prison, but he is not defined by his circumstances. So if you take the idea of God, of Christianity, if you take this idea, right, it gives, and this is why people like Marx were so incensed at these ideas, so incensed by religion. Because, of course, in Marx's mind, religion being the opiate of the people, it made you docile, made you complacent, right? You became used to your circumstances. And essentially, I mean, in a way, he was right. Not because, well, it prevented you from becoming this revolutionary. But if you remove God from the equation, like Chad alluded to with his question about it being a failed experiment, then human beings without God will take it upon themselves to try to fix things that they could never fix in the first place. Because if there is no God, then why wouldn't you try to fix the world? Because God instructs you, the Bible instructs you, it gives you an explanation as to why there's suffering in the world. And it tells you that this is the status of man until God's will, and he decides to do what God does, and everything will be wiped clean. And well, you all know how this whole story goes. But until then, you pick up your cross and you suffer, but you remain transfixed on me. But without that, then man would take it upon himself to try to fix these problems.
Yeah,
And
those
so
are
we're going to
very,
fail.
yeah, those are very good points. I mean, because I thought about that actually earlier, and I guess, of course, my mind went to, okay, well, what would have been the alternative had they said, we are a nation defined by biblical Christianity, such and so forth. What then would have been the alternative? I think what you'll probably get is a bunch of politicians who, I mean, you still have this either way, but a bunch of politicians who pretend to be Christian, so as to win votes, or so as to hold office within certain bureaucracies. You will have this constant bastardization of Christianity. I mean, yeah, I mean, even in a theocracy, I mean, that's the thing. Like we live at a point in human history where you've seen various kinds of government in power, some of which had a very strong Christian authoritative presence, and you saw the corruption therein. You saw a lot of issues within the Catholic Church, which led to the Reformation under the behest of Martin Luther. You've seen it in different monarchies and so-called democracies, and so it begs the question: well, what's the best form of government? And of course, we're not the first to ask that question. And smarter people have asked the question and have yet to come up with the answer. I know, yeah, but I mean, I think that what I take from what you said, Chuck, as far as us being human beings, and that's the issue. You know what I mean? You have human beings, irrespective of the kind of government that you have, who are running it. So failure is kind of built into the system. And then to your point, Blanche, it's all a matter of choice. This is, after all, what God gives us. He gives us choice. He gave Adam and Eve the choice to either obey or to be disobedient, and they chose the latter. And we're all given choices on a day-to-day basis. I mean, the fact that God put on flesh, taught us how to live a perfect life, died for the fact that we choose not to live a perfect life, and then rose again. And in his being, risen from the dead and ascending, gives us a choice to choose to follow him or not follow him. That's a choice that is ours, irrespective of what kind of regime or government we live in at any era in human history, whether you live under a communist government or a democratic republic or a constitutional republic or whatever the case may be. The choice is yours to pick up your cross and follow him or not. And then too, I think I would add this piece to it is we're also told by the scriptures to count the cost. And many of us who call ourselves Christians, Blanche earlier talked about a lot of Blacks adhering to a counterfeit Christianity or a counterfeit gospel. These are examples of people who have not counted the cost of what is required of you if you are going to genuinely follow the Lord. And many of us, we just choose not to. And so what we will resolve to do, because we want to evade going to hell, is that we try to come to God on our terms by coming up with the social gospel and all these other faux Christianities in order to sleep well at night, knowing full well that we have no interest in following the Lord. And so fixing the government or reframing the Constitution is not going to fix it. It's the renewing of hearts that only Christ can do that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get
I had a question.
Thread. Yeah, go ahead.
So there's a person in the chat, and she says that she is Christian and she's a Democrat. And I want you all's take on today. the Democratic Party is today, is it possible for a person to be a Christian truly and be a Democrat?
I mean, not with full knowledge of what the Democrat Party is. That's the thing. That question is so difficult for me to answer because I would venture to say that most people who call themselves a Democrat or Republican don't really know what those words mean. And I think, like, you know, for myself, when I look at history and I look at people I like throughout history have been Democrats, they've been Republicans. And while you can argue that the modern Republican Party is better than the modern Democrat Party, I think partisanship is at the kind of lowest rung imaginable when it comes to examining whether a person is true or not, if that makes sense. And so for me, it's like, it just depends. Like, if you're somebody who believes all of what the Democrat Party stands for today, you listen to Kamala Harris and you like what she has to say, you listen to Joe Biden, you listen to Hillary Clinton, you like what they have to say, then I would think it's safe to say that you're not a Christian. You can't follow the Lord and think that what these people have to say is somehow harmonious with the scriptures or somehow harmonious with, you know, what the Lord says. And while it can be argued that, you know, the same might be true of a lot of Republicans who speak, I think that the Democrats, or many Democrat politicians, are very explicit about the rejection of the gospel, rejection of Christianity. I mean, you saw that woman, that professor speaking earlier. You mean to tell me that I would venture to say she's a Democrat. You can listen to her and say, like, yeah, I share a party with that woman. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a complex question, but I think the answer that I can give most readily is probably no. Like, if you have knowledge, once again, of what the Democrat Party stands for today, and you have told yourself and you've been baptized before a congregation of believers, thereby testifying before those believers that you are choosing this day to follow Christ. If you have done that, but yet and still you think that what the Democrat Party is trying to push is somehow good, the Bible says you can't love both, you know, God and the world, and what the Democrat Party offers you is the world. And that's the simplest way that I can put it, quite frankly. I mean, and let me just kind of elaborate on that. When I say the Democrat Party offers the world, what that lady is saying in that clip, that black professor, is, you know, people should have the right to get abortions. They should have the right to do this. And what theocracy does, what Christianity does, is it prevents you from doing those things. In a roundabout way, she's kind of right. Her terms might be wrong. Her, you know, analysis might be wrong. But if you kind of condense it down to what it is, she's right. A follower of Christ won't get an abortion, right? A follower of Christ will, and to the extent that they do, they will be sorrowful for it. They will be remorseful for it. They won't gloat in it or think that it wasn't a big deal, right? And so the fact of the matter is, when you look at the Democrat Party's policies and when you look at their rhetoric on the campaign trail, they are saying that a lot of the things that they are saying is kind of like utopian. They're trying to build this kind of heaven on earth. And to pull the lever for the Democrat Party is to say yes and amen to that. I want the world that the Democrats are trying to build, this one where I don't have to work as hard as the guy who makes the money I want to make, but I want to make the money that he makes. Like that is, again, a party and its politicians offering you the world. Whereas, you know, what we think of when we think of Republican policies, even though I don't think this is actually true, but what we think of when we think of Republican policies is, you know, government, get out of the way so I can do it for myself, right? That's the kind of Republican talking point, even though when you look at Republican policies, it's not quite that. But at least from a political campaign perspective, they're not offering you the world. And so from that basic perspective, I would say that no, if you believe in what the Democrats are trying to sell, you can't at the same time call yourself a true Christian or a true follower of Christ.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's too another thing. I mean, it's this woman's, to go back to the professor on Al Jazeera. uh, she's probably been on the BBC, and next she'll be on MSNBC. But just her overall disdain for Republicans, conservatives. I mean, I'm sure she hates Trump, and she knows that. This goes back to Ronald Reagan or Goldwater even, but Ronald Reagan by then for sure. Ronald Reagan. First time you start hearing these terms in the American popular political lexicon about the religious right. I remember, Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand had some good opinions, but she still left a lot to be desired. Most glaringly was her hostility toward religion, and Ayn Rand, she despised Ronald Reagan. For those of you who don't know, just as much as she probably despised communism, and she hated Reagan because she thought that, well, because he tried to play into the sensibilities of the so-called religious right, especially when it came to a lot of Ronald Reagan's rhetoric about abortion or against abortion, right? Even though, that point of fact, as governor of California, California was one of the first states to open up to abortion. It was abortion only in the instance of sexual assault or incest. But this was signed into law by then Ronald Reagan, who was governor of California. But by the 80s, he was a lot of rhetoric, even though himself and by and large the Republican Party, they really did nothing. They had pretty much thrown it to the wind and just called it the foregone conclusion that this is where the country was and there was no going back. But the fact that Ronald Reagan's political jargon was tinged with a lot of Christian rhetoric, so to speak, Ayn Rand despised him for it. And then, before she died, I mean, she died kind of with this bitterness toward Ronald Reagan. I say all that because when this woman is speaking and she's saying all this stuff about Christian nationalism, again, this is another sleight of hand. This is another attack on what she views as a huge part of Donald Trump's constituency, a huge chunk of the Republican constituency, Christians. I believe this is in her mind. And so that's just my 2 cents to that. Chad summed it up brilliantly. And I'm going to harken back to something I hear Blanche say quite often when he is presented with this question. It's like, as a Christian, I'm not telling you that a true Christian or a real Christian votes Republican. I'm not saying that. But what I will say is that I know a true Christian cannot vote for them. You don't have to be a Republican. But how you vote for a Democrat, I don't know how you square that with your conscience. I don't understand that. But again, that's on you. But I don't know how you square that. If you want to just say, hey, as a follower of Christ, as a believer, politics is one big dirty game. And I'm just, hey, I don't vote for nobody. I'm just sitting back and I'm trying to live for Christ. Okay, fine. That's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. That's another conversation about a person and their civic duties and civic responsibilities and how that lines up with faith and what the book of Romans and the Bible has to say about government, yada, yada, yada. Different conversation. But if you don't want to participate in the civic process because of your Christian convictions, fine by me. Just don't vote for nobody. But don't tell me you vote for a Democrat. I don't know how you square that with your conscience. I don't.
And to piggyback on what y'all both said, when I ask a person, how are you a Christian and a Democrat? Their answer is always, but the Republicans, yada, yada, yada. And so I say, okay, so you shouldn't vote for either then, if you're telling me that. If you're telling me that Republicans do this too, then that means you shouldn't be supporting either party because both of the parties go against your beliefs. But the fact that you are picking the Democratic Party speaks to something else. And what Chad was talking about, you're picking the Democrats because of what they're offering. What they're offering is the fruit. What they're offering is this heaven on earth. And to me, the Republicans, you see them not offering that. They're not offering you the handout. They're not offering you this, free path to this so-called salvation. So the young lady in the chat, she was like, Republicans support abortion. And I was like, well, Republicans do support abortion, but not at 9 months, not after birth. Like I said, Republicans, I said, y'all want to support abortion to the extreme. I said, so again, if you're going to tell me they support abortion, then the logical thing for you to do is to go for the party that's going with abortion at an earlier time than 9 months. Anyway, my point is that they always respond with Republicans aren't this and Republicans do this. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't be doing anything. You should just be a Christian and say, I don't fool with politics. I'm about the Lord, and let y'all have at it. But y'all don't. There's a reason why you are picking Democrat, and it's because your church, more than likely, is Democrat. More than likely, your church aligns with the Democratic Party. And so, yeah.
And Black, I know this topic is not about abortion, but Republicans, they may be morally opposed to abortion, but when it comes to the process, this is what we're talking about. Most folks who consider themselves to be right-leaning or conservative, it's not so much about abortion. Again, as I said, they are morally opposed to abortion. The majority of them, right? Not all of them, but it's the process by which abortion became legal in all 50 states. That's always been the issue, right? It's about process and procedures and how these progressive activists on the Supreme Court inferred meaning, inferred doctrine essentially into the Fourth Amendment that was not there. It was not written. There was no constitutional protection guaranteed in the Constitution. It just wasn't. It wasn't written. That was not the intent of the amendment. And so that's what most Republicans and conservatives had an issue with, aside from the moral issue, was the fact that it was bad law. If you want to legalize abortion, then you do it the right way. We could be opposed to it, but do it the right way. That's what having this kind of cosmopolitan, what I refer to as, that's just how we sort of abide by the standard of the secular law. This is the word I use, the secular law. A lot of people may not understand what I mean when I say that. But, when you live in a society, you're going to, this is the fact, you're going to have to deal with people who do things that you don't agree with. That's just the way it is. Now, if you want to have a theocracy or some kind of empire, whatever, well, then you're talking about something totally different. But if you want to have the kind of society that we have now here in principle, you're going to have to deal with people who do things you don't agree with. You're going to have to deal with people who believe in things that you don't agree with. That's just the nature of the beast. But it's how abortion became legal. And once you start to just usurp the process and circumvent the process, then all of a sudden we become a nation not governed by laws, but we become a nation governed by men. And that was not the idea.
So let's go ahead and get to these supers. Blanche, you mind reading them?
All right. Thank you, Willie Doc, for the super sticker. We appreciate it. Chris Creative. The news media has been trying to start a race war in the U.S. Most Americans just want to be left alone and see through it. The far left would like it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris Creative. Chris Creative again. Most times around the world, weapons rights are taken away from citizens, then the genocide starts. Thank you, Chris Creative. Greg Wicks, thank you for the super sticker. Martin Towns, thank you for the super sticker. All Productions, thank you for the super sticker. Chris Creative again. The ideas of republics and freedom was never in the African mindset nor language. Blacks seem to float back to authoritarian rule. Freedom is hard.
That's true.
That's true.
They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it, man. But it's a hard truth.
Yeah. Jesus loves you. Thank you so much. And then Robert Lamoa. How probable is it that the whole tariffs issue is due to Trump's desire to increase his leverage with U.S. businessmen So they all come crawling to him to beg for exemptions.
Man, we've hammered that tariff drum on this show, and I can't do it tonight. Chad,
Well,
you got something to say to it? I'm leaving it alone. Y'all know I'm staunchly anti-tariff. But anyway, I'm not tonight.
hold on, we
I'm
got one
sorry.
more. Hold on. We got Peaceful Storm. She says, thanks for the dialogue. Thank you, Peaceful Storm, for the super sticker. Thank you so much.
Is Peaceful Storm the Christian Democrat?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. We said we weren't trying to attack you or nothing like that. I mean, you asked a fair question. We try to give a response. But like I said, I'm not trying to attack your Christian bona fides. I sure as heck are not authoritative. I can't tell you you're not saved or you're going to hell. Hey. But I just, like I said, I gave my 2 cents, and because I'm not perfect, right? I mean, I'm still a sinner. I still need redemption. I still need Jesus as much as you do. So, but I appreciate that. I appreciate the super chat and your interaction. So,
Can I say one thing about this whole Trump? Why is it that when it came to Obama, it was never what Obama wanted personally? When it came to Biden, it was never what Biden wanted personally. When it came to Kamala, it's never. Why is it Trump's the only president that they say wants something personally? Like, I'm like, why is that jacket just thrown on him? Like he wants to do it for himself. He don't care about nobody else. He just sit in his room saying, I want this for me. And I don't care about, like, it's just crazy to me. Like, all presidents have policies. All presidents have positions that they take on everything. And it's like, why is it when it's Trump, though, it's always him personally wanting something? I don't know. I just think it's silly.
And like you say, all presidents have acted in a similar manner, Blanche, some worse than others.
Right. I'm like, why is his personal, though?
FDR was one of the worst, one of the most demagogic, dictatorial, my way or the highway. FDR would just straight up steamroll you. And Obama was probably the second worst, maybe, of the 20th century. I don't know, it's debatable. But most presidents kind of have that in common, because you have to have a little bit of that in you. I mean, because whoever wants to be president in the first place has to have some sense of importance about themselves, some kind of ego, right, in the first place. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, Blanche. You know what I'm saying? It's never, especially when it's somebody on the other side, when it's a man of the left, when it's a Democrat, they seem to evade those charges all the time.
Yeah. If you haven't already, please like the stream, share the stream. Let's get the word out. Let's go ahead and get those likes up. So, transitioning real quickly. So basically, I wanted to discuss this whole business of the April jobs reports, which showed that Black women lost the most amount of jobs over the course of April. Somewhere to the tune of, I think, 300,000 some odd jobs. Those numbers look they don't look that believable to me, but who knows? They could be believable. And then, so what's interesting is that the number one employer of Black folks is the government.
How ironic, huh?
Yeah, which is very ironic. And if it were up to me, then we get rid of 90% of the federal employees and basically have them go seek jobs just like the rest of us have to do in the private sector. I think America will be served better for it. I think Western civilization will be served better for it. If we are, I'll actually save my comments for later. But I wanted to share this Rashad Ritchie clip. Here's that.
Black women faced most of the job loss in April, likely thanks to Trump's slashes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, hiring practices, initiatives. So we've added 177,000 jobs to the marketplace. But Black women have suffered the most job loss in the month of April. The math ain't mathing. That's according to the data. Black women have lost 304,000 jobs since the beginning of this year. Now, I'm talking specifically to Black Republicans, Black Trump supporters. You all have come to this program, debated me about the economic prowess of Donald Trump, how Black people will have a better opportunity when there's a business mind at the presidency. You have championed his causes. You have become apologists for his insanity, but you always said it is for Black progress. Every single one of you, in particular, the Black family. But you all haven't said a damn word since these numbers started coming out. What is the greatest contribution to divorce? Lack of finances. Unable to pay the bills. So the catalyst is right in front of you, but you all won't say a word that Trump's policies are disrupting your precious formal family structure that you all so boldly proclaimed was the thing that this was all about. You guys are cowards. You won't stand up for Black women. You won't stand up for your mama, your daughters. Thoughts?
I think he was about to cry there, but
I'm about to say, go ahead and cry.
I wish he had a cry, though. I want to see
He
him
was
cry.
trying. He was trying.
I want to see
what's
him
funny
cry.
what's funny though is like, I think with a combination of that clip and the clip that we played of the Black professor woman, what you get a sense of, and I hope you're getting this, chat, is the dysfunction of Black culture. And it's encompassed in something that he said and something that the Black professor woman said. Now, let me just kind of play it back for you right quick. So with the Black woman, she said that another example of racism is that in some state, or I don't know if they're going to do this federally, but in some state, she or they are going to give $5,000 to new mothers by, vis-a-vis a tax credit or what have you. And she said, well, who is that for? Is that for the Black single mother, or is that for the white woman who's married? Right. So take, let's set that right here. And then let's look at what Rashad Ritchie just said. Oh, Black Republicans and Black conservatives and Black Christians, y'all are all about family values. But what about the fact that the Black woman is losing her job because of the cancellation of DEI? And so encompassed in those two things, once again, is a glimpse into the dysfunction of Black culture. It is, in fact, the man who's supposed to be the breadwinner of the family, not the woman. I mean, it just is what it is. Call me old fashioned, but I stand by what I just said. And then to the woman's point, when she said that, oh, Black single mothers or married white women, she's basically telling you that Black women are not interested in getting married. And so rather than building an infrastructure around values, family values, Christian values, they are trying to accommodate what they call Blackness, not getting married, the matriarchy, the woman being the breadwinner, so on and so forth. They want to use the federal government to build an infrastructure around Black values versus conventional Christian values. And so again, I'm hoping you get that glimpse into what they are calling Black culture. Yeah, right. Y'all like to call us all kinds of sellouts and coons when we tell you that's what Black culture is, but they're saying it in a more sophisticated way, and they don't get nearly as much smoke. Panel, what say you all?
Man, I ain't got nothing to add, Chad. That was perfect. That was brilliant. I wonder what's the stats. How many of these Black women who lost these government jobs, how many of them even have husbands? What is this guy talking about? I wonder how many of them are even married in the first place. The problem with the divorce rate or the marriage rate in the Black community, listen, this thing been long before
Right.
Trump
y'all ain't getting married enough to even have it be a problem. Like,
right, what are we even talking about?
Married, like, I got a question. Now they said 300,000+ Black women lost their jobs in March, which I don't believe, but
Yeah.
But my question is, how do y'all know it's women? Because just a couple of months ago, y'all couldn't define what a woman was. Now you know what a woman is when it comes to losing jobs. You got to make your mind up. Is it a woman that lost their job, or is it a them and a they? Which one is it? Is it a man identifying as a woman who actually lost these jobs? I don't know. So help me out, please.
Whether them or they, I don't know, man.
Help me out. Now we know what a woman is. Stop.
Yeah, they know what a woman is when it's convenient for them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what got me was him about to cry.
I wish he had.
What is that? Like, what is that? I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand that.
Listen, Chad, Black men are prisoners of war. They have been getting terrorized by Black women for so long to where they're trying to just appeal to Black women any way possible, whether it's groveling, simping. It's just they'll try any method to get in their good graces. And it's funny because she'll never pick Richie. She'll pick Pookie. She'll pick Ray Ray, but they will never pick Richie. So all that groveling he's doing and selling out, it's not going to work. Black women, they're disgusted by you.
Yeah,
they want Future. They don't want you. You too light skinned.
Speaking of
great
Black
value. He's a great value. What's the dude's name? Michael Eric Dyson. great value. Michael Eric Dyson. Like, come on, man.
Terrible.
Speaking of Black men being prisoners of war, check out this clip.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you have any family members that are MAGA?
No.
You'll get the biggest kick out of this, Monday, and I don't think Pumps knows this. So during this most recent election, my husband, I live in I would say a 99.9% white neighborhood. Okay. So my husband comes home from work and he goes, well, the weirdest thing just happened. The house 2 blocks south of us just put up 2 MAGA signs in their front yard, and they're Black.
No.
How's that?
No.
Or the only Black family that lives in this godforsaken whiteness, and they're fucking MAGA. He goes, it's just such a disappointment to me.
No.
Yes. And they had 2. They're a corner house, and they had. And I was just like, because I remember when they moved in, Roman, my son that told me, the prom send-offs, the culture, he was like, I love this. We need to have more color in this neighborhood. And I go, I agree. That family popped up MAGA signs.
Black Republicans is something I will never understand.
I agree.
Well, we're cooning though, right? We're the ones sitting up here cooning, right?
I guess. Wow.
Like if that's not a coon, I don't know what is. Like, you got the little ring, like, and he's letting these white women. Okay.
He's letting these white women tell him what is Black and what Black can be. Exactly. Black cannot be MAGA. Black cannot vote for Trump. Black has to be what we say it is, the white liberal. I would never understand Black conservatives. Dude, you are a flamethrower. Stop. What are we talking about?
I will never understand gay sex.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, dude, what you talking about? You can't understand something. You're getting drilled.
No. People, she said, we were just talking about how we need some more color in this neighborhood. I got an idea for you there, Miss Lady, right? How about you and your husband or whoever you're married to? How about you sell that nice house in that all-white neighborhood? I got some cheap real estate I can sell you in Detroit. There's some spots available for you if you want to go in and move in and have at it. Get all the color you want.
Right.
What are you talking about? Oh, let the Black folk come in, but they're not the kind of Black folk you like. Okay. Right. Boy, I tell you, when the Clarence Thomas says there's a high-tech lynching, boy, I tell you, you niggas gonna stay in line. I tell you. Wow.
And then they pose the question to him, like they got to get the okay from him to say what they want to say. So he has to okay at first so they can really go in. So he's like, what do you think about it? And then once he goes in, they can go in now because the Black man that said we got to pass now. Disgusting.
Some of the most racist people, bro.
Racist.
Well, I tell you that I gotta. I mean, you know, I'm not a huge fan of Malcolm X. You know, I disagree with his worldview as a whole. But you know, when I'll tell you, when he said that the white liberal is the most dangerous animal in the Western Hemisphere, it's women like that. The lowest form of humanity.
They are beasts of burden, dude. They are horrible. two aging white liberal women with a gay black man on the show talking about this family. Now guess what? This could be an actual decent, hardworking, God-fearing, good family, and they're just shunning them completely. Think about that. Think about this family moving in, and you are literally perpetuating what you all say you're against, which is racism. Judging these people based on a political view, like it's just crazy.
Sick.
Well, that's a wonderful place to leave it. Do we have any more supers?
Yes. Gina Linden, I think it would be good to share to how the handouts are at taxpayers' expense.
Well, yeah. That's what the government do. We fund the government. We fund the government.
Yeah, and that goes back to like what I was saying about the infrastructure. They're trying to build an infrastructure around blackness, and they want to do they want to spend the tax dollars our tax dollars to use it or to do it. So they're trying to subsidize their black decadence with the American tax dollars.
And then Gina Linda says we need to pray the Lord opens eyes and ears. Yes, amen.
All righty, so that will do it for this evening. I wanted to talk about again these Republicans that I've been seeing on X, formerly known as Twitter, lauding, you know, how the first black congressmen and senators were Republicans and how that's a badge of honor. And I wanted to give a little bit more nuance to that, but looks like we're out of time this week. Maybe we can get to that next week. But anyway, I love you all. Please like the show if you haven't already. Please go and follow the gentlemen that you see here, Mr. Chuck Littleton, Mr. Blanchard Robinson. Their information is in the description. Until next time, I love you all and God bless.
God bless.